Welcome to a detailed look at the number 84 splitter from CS Osborne & Co. A splitter that was originally designed and made in the 1800s for the professional leather worker. You will still see Newark, New Jersey on the frame, even though the company moved to Harrison at the turn of the 1900s. This is because the cast iron frame is still being made the same way as it was back then, with the original cast mould still being used up to this day. The 84 is the largest splitter from Osborne and comes with a solid and extremely sharp 8-inch blade. CS Osborne have been making tools for the leather industry since 1826 and is one of the oldest family-run businesses still going in the US. Believing in owning all the steps of the manufacturing process to control quality, Osborne makes all the parts of this machine in-house. The roller is now CNC engineered and the 8-inch hologram blade is made of inlaid tungsten steel.
Now, this is certainly the prettiest side of the splitter. I love classic machines, I love the intricacies and the artwork of them, even though they're functional. But unfortunately, this is the back. So we need to turn the tool around. This is actually the front, and this is how we want to mount it to the bench, because the leather will come in here and be pulled out from here. So before we do this, we need to remove the blade. It is an 8-inch exceptionally sharp blade, so we need to be careful. I'm going to use a small bar to loosen the blade screws. That will release the blade and we can carefully put that out the way. This then gives us more access to these two holes at the bottom to mount it to the bench. 4 good sturdy screws. We'll see it fixed. We need to fix it to the bench because we will be pushing the tool with the bar and also pulling by pulling the leather through it, so it doesn't want to move. Having taken the blade off the tool, we can see some of the component parts a little clearer. We can see the roller. This is the CNC'd roller that will guide the leather through the machine, giving you a nice flat consistent cut. We can see the 2 screws that hold the blade in place. We can see the twisting handle. This turns, releasing it to move up and down the guide, and then twists to lock it into place. It doesn't need a lot of pressure, don't need to over tighten it. So we can bring it towards us. That'll increase the thickness that we can run through, giving you a less of a skive. We can decrease it, giving you less space to run through, giving you more of a skive. We also have a lock here, so once we have a thickness we're happy with, we can lock our guide off, and then when we come back it will return. We also have the bar over the top, and that's to stop you catching your fingers. Once the blade's in place, we can lock that over to make sure that it's totally safe. So how do we then put the blade back? Again, taking care. You will see there are 2 large slots for it to slide under the head of the blade screws. Now, the temptation would be to push these all the way forward, but that then hides the roller. The idea of these slots and the blade being adjustable is you will eventually grind this blade down. It will last that long, and over the years of use this blade will reduce in width, so therefore you have to move it forward. Osborne have realised that this tool is going to last several lifetimes, so have factored in this slot to make it easier for you to move this blade as you grind it. The perfect cut is at the apex of this wheel, and that's exactly where your blade wants to sit, dead centre of the wheel at the apex, where the leather is riding highest, and you are going to get the best cut. Anything before that, it's slightly lower. Anything after that, it is slightly lower. So what we can do now is do these blade screws up, and then with some good pressure lock it into place. We can now drop the safety bar back in place and drop the wheel. We're ready to skive. One of the lovely features of the 84 is the ability to increase and decrease the distance between the wheel and the blade. Now, the vast majority of people, when making belts, require a skive at the end of the strap, so when the belt folds over, the bulk isn't all gathered at the back. There's a gentle taper, and the thickness of the belt tapers in nicely. So this is one of the wonderful things about this particular tool, is we can lock in and start our cut. A little bit more energy there, I think, and this is much tougher, so we need to give it a little bit more encouragement, at which point now I can twist the handle, work it forward whilst I pull it through. This gives us a nice gentle taper from 4.5mm down to about 1.5mm. So when we fold this over, all of this bulk isn't gathered at the back of the belt. It thins nicely and tapers to the back. Sometimes the process of skiving with this tool is a little intimidating, of pulling with one hand and pushing with the other. Gaining a level of confidence to get the right consistency takes time. Initially there is a way of stepping, because the wonderful thing about this is we can lock it off and it is a splitter. We can move it and it is a skiver. So by that rationale, what we can do is we can move it forward and lock in our leather nice and tight, enough to start to get a bite. Sometimes it's not enough and we have to do a little more. Grab it with our fingers, push the blade with our thumbs, and we need to go more. Lock it in a little further, and then we begin our cut. And at which point now, incrementally, we can begin to move our handle forward, getting a deeper cut as we go. And we continue on until we finish at the desired level. And what we can do is set our block at the back to achieve that. So now we have a stepped skive, but nonetheless has the same effect as a gentle skive, and this will still fold over and taper into the back of the belt, losing the bulk behind the leather. Should we be wanting to make wallets out of a thicker piece of leather, because it's the surface that we want, and bearing in mind the vast majority of leathers that you buy are the same price, irrelevant of what thickness, sometimes you want to be able to make it out of the same leather that you have. This splitter will cope with a much larger piece, and at which point then we have a beautifully thin piece of leather that we can make our card pockets from, fold over, glue down, and make some beautiful items out of some very high quality leathers. Now, this piece of leather may be uneven. One end may be slightly thicker than the other, and I would suggest that this side is the thinnest side. Leather is organic, and over a hide thicknesses can change. So I'm going to place the thin piece of leather into the splitter, and I'm going to catch it, and now I'm going to lock this bar up against my guide so I can come back to it. I shall now undo it and turn the leather round, at which point now when I lock it off, that is giving me a consistent pressure. If I then draw this off, I can take an exceptionally thin piece of leather from the back, but I know now that both ends are exactly the same thickness. And if we were to look at this, we will notice it's slightly thicker here than it is here. And that, I mean, this is so thin, it's coming apart. This is thicker. But that inconsistency can transfer to your face, because now we have evened up our leather and we have a very, very smart and consistent cut, we can turn it over. Reinsert our leather. We have a tab that we're going to use to pull, so that can go beyond. And now I'm going to take this a little further using the guide marks on the left. I'm going to push it in a little bit more, and what I want to do now is take a slither off here, but because the leather that I'm pulling through is thin and even, let's just bring it back to the centre. The cut that it is producing is exceptionally consistent. If we were to roll this up and see, we have an extremely consistent cut. This now allows me to bend it. I can either, with this, make a rolled edge or a pipe seam. That is just a small demonstration of the versatility of this splitter. I hope that gives you an understanding into the versatility of this tool and what you can do with it. It does take practice. Setting it up is very important, and looking after it, giving the blade a strop is important. We will look at sharpening it in a different video, but nonetheless you will begin to see the things that you can achieve with a tool of this quality.